G'day, guys, and welcome to the Centre Bounce, where today we'll be talking about the Western Bulldogs beating the Hawks. Stay tuned. Yes, Big J, it was another day where we've had 3 match sims, so that means 3 more videos coming out. We were up very late last night trying to get those ones done. We've definitely started a little bit earlier this time around to talk about the Dogs kicking 108 points compared to the Hawks, who only kicked 83. How did you see this game, mate?
It was a really weird one because it wasn't a straightforward, cool, best team versus best team, and not even a best team versus best team, and then, 4 quarters of that, and then the VFL guys playing after. Joe, some of the players from the Doggies team didn't even play, and they went off and played the Box Hill in some secret underground game that wasn't televised or anything. And then all the other Doggies played Hawthorn. So we got all these stats, we've got all these match sim information and notes, and hey, like no Bonds, no English, a few of these other guys. It's kind of hard to gauge where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of players missing from this Western Bulldogs side. Obviously, there was a lot missing from the Hawks as well. Some of them due to injuries are out of their control. They can't really control how many people get injured and whatnot. But the Bulldogs, yeah, they were missing some really big name players like English and Bond, Trelaw, Jamara, uh, Richards, Bailey Dale. So some really big names not in the side, but the players that did play, the ones that were left behind, certainly were good enough to, I suppose, account for the Hawks, who really tried hard, but just simply weren't quite as polished, I suppose, and didn't have that connection for most of the game that the Bulldogs had. I thought their ball movement was a lot better than the Hawks, who at times just kept shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, as you say, it does make it really hard as well to try and gauge, like, cool, where does a Caulfield play, for example? How is he going to go? He did really well in the game today, but when you're missing your entire back line, like, it kind of makes it a bit harder to gauge where it is. So take what you can out of this game, but next week's game, when they have the proper intra-club, or not intra-club, when they have the proper preseason game, hopefully they'll play properly and they'll have everyone ready to go, and we can kind of work out where guys are going to be and if they should be in our Supercoach teams.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, it's no surprise. I wouldn't be disappointed and upset if you're a Hawthorn fan after what you saw today. There were definitely great patches of play. Some areas of the ground where the Hawks really got on top, especially when they were able to run the ball and I suppose use that handball to the outer side. They were able to spread really well. And then as the game went on, they started to get the ball in the hands of like a Massimo, for example, who has been very good with the ball use. So, look, overall, it was definitely not a shameful outing by any stretch. My boys were definitely a lot more embarrassing than the Hawks today, that's for sure. So, if you are a Hawthorn fan, then absolutely, I wouldn't be very disappointed.
Yeah, there's a lot of Hawks fans who I think maybe kind of take the same plot as what you're taking, but a lot of people, as you say, taking on some of their young players did quite well. Like they were the worst team on paper, even just with all the Doggies outs. They were the worst team, obviously lower on the ladder, probably not competing for finals. But as you say, in parts in the game, they've really stood up. And I was just like, wow, like the transition from the forward line to the back line and vice versa. Where's this been? Sammy Mitchell's working on some shifty things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a good game. I was pretty surprised as well by the Bulldogs. I thought they came out and they did a really good. I thought it was going to be closer, to be honest, especially around the midfield battle, considering the names that were missing. But
Yep.
I thought they were very well led. A great mix of age, of experience, and youth. And it definitely helps when the youth that you've got is also incredibly good, which we're going to talk about in the individual players section. But it was quite an entertaining game, to be honest. Yeah, there were times where the Bulldogs just kicked away with the multiple goals in a row, but it never felt like it was a blowout, to be honest. So, all in all, a fair hit out. Again, scrappy by both teams. They'll be better for the run, as will everyone else. Was there anything else you want to talk about this game, or you want to move on now to the specifics of the individuals?
Mate, let's just jump into the game.
All right, then we will be starting off with the Western Bulldogs who won this game. We've got some names. Now, the first one on this list is Jason Johannesson, as we've got here listed now, because there was no Bailey Dale, as we mentioned. There was also no Ed Richards. So really, Jason Johannesson had a really good game coming off halfback, I felt. He was really important. Took some kick-ins. Just that mature, I suppose, approach to the game. Knew when to go, knew when to stop. Was really in control of what he was doing against the youngest forward line. And you could tell that he was never really under immense pressure. He sort of conducted the game really well. And I had to give him a fair shout out. Obviously, I don't think that sort of performance is going to continue to hold, especially when those two guys that we mentioned come back into the side, and as well as playing against tougher forward lines and tougher opposition. But I have to give him a fair shout out today because I thought he did really well.
Yeah, the game was kind of run off halfbacks from both sides, right? We'll talk about Massimo and the halfback from the Hawks, but we definitely saw it out of the back line from the Dogs, and it was exciting football to watch. Yes, they did have people out, but if it's a like for like and those players come back and play the same role, the Dogs might actually start impressing on field and not just have to be a midfield dominant team.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely was able to launch some of these plays off halfback, largely as well due to how good this guy was in the air.
I didn't realize when I first started watching the game, because I was at work, right? So like I was being a bit sneaky and then like had it on in the background. I didn't realize Bont was out, and I was like, Bont looked a bit different, but there was this tall guy with a beard who was running up and down the ground and kicking the ball through the middle. I'm like, oh, Bont got the ball. What, is he changed numbers now? Liam Jones did quite well. That's all we're saying. He showed us kind of what we were expecting last year as a player. And sadly, he's not 200K. Otherwise, he could actually end up in some people's selections. 327K, not really Supercoach relevant, but was commanding that back line today. Taking intercepts, as I said, running the ball through the middle, setting guys up in the forward line, and just kind of being that stalwart player that the Dogs need. I'm not sure how many key tools were missing out of the Dogs' back line, but if Liam Jones has this role, good on him.
Yeah, I really wish he looked this good in the preseason last year when we had him a lot cheaper. But look, it is what it is. He's got some runs under the legs, and he was really good. Again, as you say, with some intercepts. And this guy next to him also took some intercept marks today. Nick Caulfield. He was a really interesting one for a lot of us because there was some mixed reports coming out of the Bulldogs. Is this guy doing really well? Is he best 22? Is he not? He's very borderline. And then Inside the Kennel was on with DR for the Western Bulldogs preview, and he wasn't very confident about Caulfield either. So it was really important for us to have a look and see how he looked today. Of course, again, there are players out of that back line who will be returning, but there was some glowing, I suppose, talking out of the coaching group after the game, which said that he really impressed them. And to be honest, he did impress me as well. Definitely took some opportunities to take some really good intercept marks. And I will not forget, he had a massive spoil in the first quarter that really got me on attention. Like, oh, okay, yeah, he's backing himself to play really well today.
Yeah, I mean, you don't bring a player like Nick Caulfield across from the Saints and not give him a run. You're not going to stick this guy who's, early 20s, early draft pick, definitely has the talent, but can he play on field and make it work? It seems like it's happening. And one of the coaches, Brendan Lade, basically has come out and said, yeah, impressed in the back line. And I think comments like that definitely warrant you to get selected for next week in the other preseason game. So hopefully with Richards and Dale and these other players who are around a similar body size to come back and could feature in a similar role, hopefully Caulfield plays. And the Doggies just need help in that back line, Joe. So having more of these mobile type intercept players really frees up those other ones, as I mentioned, to go up the ground and do things like they have done in previous years without having a deficiency in the back line.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching this guy and I was watching the game and I was thinking to myself, oh, he's not really doing much at one stage. I'm like, oh, he looks really quiet. You know what? I think they'd do better off picking Buku Kamis. I think Buku Kamis is looking better. And then as soon as I thought that to myself while watching the game, this guy just simply pops up, takes this wonderful intercept, takes a couple of kick-ins, a wonderful intercept on the wing, and then sets up this scoring chain. I'm like, oh, bloody hell. He heard me talking about him and comparing him to Buku Kamis. All right, I'm sorry, Caulfield. I'm sorry. Okay, you've earned yourself some more discussion points, but I was comparing him to Buku Kamis because I thought Buku had a really good game as well, playing in the back line.
Yeah, I mean, like Buku Kamis, North Melbourne were after him. We can kind of see why now. A lot of other clubs are actually after him during the trade period because it really felt like he was on the fringes. He was getting pushed out of the forward line. He can't really play there with all the amazing talent they've got in there. Plus more father sons, Ugle Hagen, Norton, these guys in there as well. So where do you play him? Cool. The Dogs need backline help. Buku Kamis can jump. He can mark. He might not be the best one-on-one, but if you can do both of those things effectively, you're going to play most weeks. And we saw, Joe, I don't know what quarter it was, but when Buku Kamis took up, it must have been like a one-arm grab. I was just like, mate, I know why other clubs were after you and you weren't just a fringe player, probably going to get delisted at the end of the year. So, yeah, very, very good. Earned himself at least a watch-along in my preseason team and definitely keen to see what happens next year because no spot is cemented. Apart from someone who's 184K in our midfield that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. This guy's, That's it. 100% owned or see you next year, mate.
Correct. Absolutely. Speaking of 100%, this guy was very close to 100% in the midfield in terms of the CBAs that he was getting. This guy definitely led the way in the midfield for the Bulldogs. He was the leader. He was the old experience in and under head. And I did like his mature approach to it. He wasn't being overly explosive. He was just simply doing, the little things, winning the hard ball. And he wasn't really running it out. He was very happy to win the ball and then free it up, pass it on to the next person on the outside who had some space. So it wasn't a lot of Liberatore running and gunning it. No, he was very happy to just win the ball at the coalface and then dish it out. And I think that sort of game style really allowed these runners on the outside for the Bulldogs, who we're going to be talking about, I suppose. They were all really shone, I feel, and they definitely played really well. I think Libba did a good job to make them look really good, especially in the absence of all these other players who didn't play in this game. Libba, they definitely owe a massive thanks to this guy.
Yeah, it really did feel like he was that stalwart older player in the team, kind of doing exactly what he needed to, but giving the younger guys the capacity and the space to play out their games. We'll talk about Sanders and Williams and a few of these other guys like Harms later, but he took a couple of goals, did that, and they kept talking about in the commentary, hey, Libba, new leadership profile, he's going to be vice captain, all these other things for this year, and it really showed on fields. Like no Bont, as you say, no Treloar, so they were missing a lot of those older guys, and Libba just did Libba things, and that was it. He didn't. I think if the game was closer and the Dogs were playing properly in this type of situation, he probably would have forced himself to step up a lot more. But taking that stance back and just being like, cool, I'll just be where I need to be, was really good to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And he just used that experience against this younger Hawthorn midfield really well. There were times that he just did things effortlessly. And speaking of effortlessly, I'm going to skip these other two people. We can't not talk about this guy. You want effortless? Mate, this guy just simply receiving a ball, walking through congestion, strolling to 50 meters and just just slotting it absolutely as easy as you like. This guy was absolutely sensational. He has to be in all of our sides. Let me have a look at how many people have currently got Sanders in the side.
It better be close to 100. Like,
oh my God, just over half.
It's actually gone down. I think it's gone down. I think it was 60 odd, and now it's gone down. So, people, do your due diligence. chuck in Riley Sanders. There's a reason why he's pick 5. There's a reason why the Dogs gave up basically their entire draft hand to get him into their team. There's a reason why North Melbourne wanted him as an NGA player, would have given up their entire compensation package last year to get Riley Sanders as just a free selection because the kid's that good. You saw him in the midfield today, Joe. He was just running up, doing whatever he wanted. He was pushing over established older players and just being like, get out of my face. He kicked a goal as well, maybe a second one, and just looked very, very good. Yes, Hawthorn, but hey, fantastic player. I can really see him jumping up to like high 300s, 400s K in Supercoach and just being like almost a keeper until the second lot of buy rounds. Like,
yeah,
really good player. Upgrade everywhere else and just keep Riley Sanders till he's buy and you'll be happy.
He was going head to head with John Newcomb.
Yeah,
you know what I
mean.
This
is a first year player. Like,
not even a first year player. This is the first day player. He's just got drafted in the preseason. He's basically a first day, and his body is ready to go. He was going head to head with the nuke, Jai Newcomb, bro. So, mate, Riley Sanders, I tip my hat off to your son. That is a wonderful performance. Other players who did really well, I guess we'll move on to this next guy, Caleb Daniel. He had some moments where he actually lined up on the ball in center bounces. Obviously, whether or not that continues with the return of those missing players is a different story, but they definitely did like getting the ball in his hands and trying it on the outside and trying to use his precision kicking. He is a very good kick, Caleb Daniel. So I thought he actually got quite a bit of it. He was a good accumulator. I thought he had a really decent game. He is forward eligible, which makes him a bit more interesting. Obviously, not going to have him in your midfield, but he could be shaping as a forward primo, but you would have to look and see what role he's going to have with all those guys back in the side next week.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to miss out too much if you don't start him and then you bring him in halfway through the season when you actually start upgrading the forward line. So you can hold out and wait for him, but totally agree. He was running up and down, went half back, and then brought the ball up to the forward line. So he did some really good things. Bont being out, Treloar being out, a few of these other guys who do rotate through that midfield being out probably doesn't help, but it gave Caleb Daniel like another gear. And I think he loves to run around. He just gets relegated to the back line and it's like, oh, cool. I can just do chip kicks. You never need me to run. Whereas today was like, oh, I actually get to run. And it was really good to see.
Yeah, it was really good to see. Someone else who got to run was this guy, Bailey Williams, who played a lot more forward of center. So I really think this guy is going to get DPP with forward eligibility. He's not going to be Supercoach relevant by any stretch. I just wanted to shout him out because I thought he did some really good things forward of the ball, in the forward 50, some great leads, some great repeat efforts. I liked Bailey Williams' game. Obviously, not a Supercoach relevant player, but I just wanted to shout him out. As you guys can tell from our other videos, not every player that we talk about is necessarily Supercoach relevant, but we do appreciate the football side of things because you can't play Supercoach without having an eye for the football side of things as well. And we always think it's always a great thing to shout out certain players who had a great game out there in the public, because just because you might not be Supercoach relevant does not make you any less of a footballer. So wanted to give him a shout out for a good game today.
Yeah, definitely. These reports are as much of a report on the game as opposed to what players are only Supercoach relevant. And sometimes, you've got to talk about the ins and outs and guys who just showed up on the day as well. So,
yep. And the astronaut was one of those guys.
The hair showed up. I'll tell you what,
mate, the hair, the headband, the marking. He was unstoppable today. Genuinely, he was unstoppable, and it was good to see because he was up against a very depleted Hawthorn backline. And if he didn't show up and didn't dominate in the way that he did, it would have been really disappointing, a guy of his talent not doing that. But to his credit, he did. Nothing came easy. So the Hawks definitely tried, but he pushed up the ground and he was just marking everything at will. Shout out to Norton for a very good game. Not Supercoach relevant though.
there's all those talks always going along. I think he's the one that signed that massive contract to stay at the Dogs, but always talks, oh, is he going to go back home, back to WA? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. So for him to finally stand up and be that player that we know, I mean, it's only preseason game one, but
Yeah.
start to be that player that we know he's got the capacity to do, will mean the Dogs are going to move further up the ladder. Like, he's one of those crucial ones where every year the midfield does well, the ruck's good. It's more the forward line problems, and if Norton can kind of stand up and do that, then Dogs fans are going to be happy.
Especially in the absence of Jamara today. He was the lone spearhead, supplemented by this guy, Sam Darcy, who I thought had a really good game as well. Was very, I suppose, like he was a go-getter today. He looked like he really felt confident and that he belonged, and he was assertive, and he was pinch hitting in the ruck as well, supporting Rory Lobb. There was no English today, so I honestly thought Sam Darcy had a wonderful game. Of course, with English coming back, we would obviously naturally see a less featuring in the ruck and a lot more stuck at home as a key forward, which makes it a lot less interesting, I suppose, as a Supercoach selection. But mate, when he's given responsibility, it looks like he's ready to take it now.
Well, that's what you want as well. And with the talks that English may stay, may not stay, having a player shore up and being like, cool, I'm going to play and do my part. That's what you definitely want. There was, remember last year, there was all these talks that Darcy was going to play backline and lining up there and whatnot. So for him to come back and actually play in his preferred position, it's good to see. I was impressed. He took a couple of nice marks in the forward line, and you could just see, yep, you were going to kick that goal. And that's what he did, really. So congrats to him.
Yeah, absolutely. This guy's the mid-pricer in the forward line. We're going to talk about the rookie price after him. But this guy, everyone sort of wants to know, should we have him in our forward lines?
I want him. So at the moment, he's in my team. So just run over the stats, right? Libba took 82% of CBAs, Sanders 82, Darcy 74. Obviously, he was rucking. And then Harms was the next at 65. Like, we know Bont's going to be out. We know Treloar, if he's fit, like he wasn't playing today. So maybe that drops down a little bit, but I think the Dogs know what they get out of Harms. And maybe it's a mix of Bailey Smith, what he did alongside Sanders, and then Josh Dunkley as well. But he's quick and he can run through there, and he sets up goals as well. So I'm waiting for next week when they play the second preseason game. But at the moment, he's still in my team. What about you?
Yeah, he's in my team at the moment. Definitely want to see how it looks like with the other players that obviously going to come in, as you mentioned. Still keeping an eye on him. You never know with Bevo what's going to happen. He featured more in CBAs this week. He might feature, I think he'll definitely feature less next week. But I do want to see what sort of output we can get from him without those CBAs, whether or not it's worth the price, or if I save my money and go for like a rookie, for example. So jury's still out on Harms, but today he was fine. I'll just say that he was fine today. Rookie Cummins we mentioned, but this guy, I love this guy. My word, like I heard the name Gallagher pop up. I was at work too. Don't get me wrong, right?
You know the TV show Shameless? It was like Gallagher. What?
I don't know why. For some reason, I thought this guy was not a rookie. I don't know why. I thought, oh, Gallagher, so I don't know how expensive he's going to be. And I didn't quite pay attention to him until he got it quite a few times. I'm like, you know what? Stuff this. What's just out of curiosity? What is this guy? A 123K forward? I almost fell off my chair at work, to be honest. I loved this kid's game. He was so good. He had quite a few incredible pickups on the run, under heat, with some of these stray handballs, and he was really clean at ground level. He wasn't necessarily prolific, but he got it quite enough, and he used it well enough as well for me to really notice him. He attended some center bounces as well, and then he even was able to push forward from that center bounce after that clearance, run forward. and slot a very nice goal as well. So obviously they were missing a bunch of players, so he might not feature in centre bounces. But my word, this kid is a really good player. Definitely on the outside, some good run, and very clean. Oh, I really hope this guy gets a chance because he was a joy to watch today.
Hey, 123K, I'll take him every day of the week, especially in the forward line.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll then make our way to the Hawks and their players. And these are the Hawks players, starting off with none other than the sick dog. Big J?
I thought he did all right today. I was kind of looking out for what was going to be his role, and he did take a few intercepts. So scoring wise was okay, but the dog's tools just kind of nullify everything that Hawthorn tries to do because they just don't have enough tall defenders to stop kind of a ruckman and then three guys in the forward line. So it's a bit of a deficiency and something that's like, cool, scissors paper beats rock, right? That's the Dogs team versus Hawthorn's team. So there were some nice things. I did see some poor disposal efficiency too, and a couple of times maybe where he got a bit cranky at people. So he's not in my team at the moment. I can see why you would pick him, but it kind of confirms a little bit what we were saying about other people not being in positions. And we haven't marked Hardwick as being as a forward option yet, but definitely he was one that impacted Sicily in today's game.
Yeah, so yeah, I wouldn't go sick dog at the moment. We sort of already forecasted even before all of the injuries started coming in a bit of a regression with people eating into his scoring, and then of course with all the injuries that came, I feel like he wasn't quite able to be as free as he wanted to be, and this is without Jamara in the side as well. So you would imagine if Jamara was playing today, that their hands really would have been full with the combination of Jamara, Norton, and Darcy. It would have been really hard, and Sicily would have had to play really accountable defense. So this is not the floor. It can get worse, and I imagine that we're going to get him we can get him a lot cheaper than this current price point.
I agree too. I reckon we'll be able to pick him up at some. This is my prediction. We'll be able to get Sicily at 520K at some point during the season and jump on him when it happens because it will go back up again.
There you go. You heard it here first. Heard it here first, folks. This guy, Jarman Impey, he was one of the people that was eating into his scoring, I feel. Definitely was used a lot of halfback. They were very happy having the ball in his hands, coming out of the back line, using his run, using his good disposal. Him and the next guy that we're going to talk about really sort of had turns, I guess, when it comes to how dominant they were, I guess, with the ball in hand. I think Impey really became a lot more prominent as the game went on, especially later in the piece. I thought this guy was definitely receiving a lot of good ball off halfback, even running from halfback after coming off a centre bounce. He's the sweeping player coming off the back of the square, receiving the ball from a clearance, maybe from like a Newcomb or something, feeding him the ball as he's running past. So, he's experienced, and there was no Carl Amon today. Is it a very major thing to raise?
Yeah, if you think about a couple of years ago when we used to have Impey in the forward line and he was about, 300K, and then it became a pseudo keeper for us in Supercoach, at least someone who was scoring decent numbers. That's the position that he had. But when you look at the Hawks team, no Will Day, no Carl Amon, no CJ. Like, these are the running players that they have, and they're all out. So Impey kind of got relegated to that role. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. Maybe not a day because he's going to be a while, but definitely Carl Amon when he comes back. What happens? I don't think he's going to end up being Supercoach relevant, but as you say, did affect Sicily's scoring in a negative way and will continue to do so, I think, for the whole season. Once he's fit, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And this guy as well. I thought he was prolific very early. In that first quarter, I don't know how many times he got the ball, but every time I'd look up, it just felt like Weddle just had the ball on a string almost. He was very, very impactful. Again, how much of it does he have with Amon coming back? Only time will tell. Amon was managed today because I think he was sore due to soreness he was
Mm.
managed. So whether or not he comes back next week for the other match, for the other practice game, preseason game, remains to be seen. But if he stays out, Weddle was great. Definitely got a lot quieter as the game went on, became a lot more impy focused. But very early on, I was really impressed with what Weddle gave us.
Yeah, definitely. There were a few times during the game where I think he went out and he should have marked it, but he came up
Yep.
and elected to spoil. And they definitely said that on the TV, like on the commentary, was like, hey, why is he not doing this? Like, instead of knocking it out and forcing a reset of the play, he could have been there and grabbed a nice intercept mark or just a mark in general, a pass back, things like that. And it would have helped him with his run and carry to be able to set up more things on the field. So, something to watch a little bit with his game. I know that like a Ben Mackay and some other players, as their careers have progressed, as they get older, they kind of get set in their own ways of, cool, well, this is how I used to play. This is what's comfortable with. It's a little bit of a watch because he could potentially be losing some points every week just because he's not marking. But fantastic player. You can see what they want to do. Early draft pick a couple of years ago. And, mate, Hawthorn are onto a winner, Joe. Just not really Supercoach relevant.
No. This guy probably is a little bit more Supercoach relevant
Yeah.
given his lower price point, and really could be an alternative to Williams if he
Mm-hmm.
can't get up for round one. We could end up going with Massimo D'Ambrosio. He had a really good game and really just built in as the game continued to go on.
Yeah, well, if we look at the stats, AFL Central has him at 86 Supercoach points. Sorry, at 86 AFL Fantasy points. So probably add another 10 or so for Supercoach, maybe take a little bit away for poor efficiency. But I think he had 26 touches, 10 were effective, 4 tackles. So, sorry, 20 were effective and 4 tackles. So, yeah, he did really well. He really impressed me, and you can see what they were trying to do, having him as that run player off the halfback. You don't bring players like this, and similar with Ginnivan, right? You don't bring players like this into your team if you think they're going to play VFL. Like they don't come across to a club, especially when other people want them, if they're not going to be guaranteed at least a chance in football for the senior
Mhm.
team. And Maximo impressed me today. I know why like Essendon picked him up, and sad to say he left for free, and now he's going to play best 22 footy at the Hawks.
Yeah, he
Sorry,
definitely
Joe.
also did some nice things on the wing. Good for him.
Yeah.
Look, he's we offered him a contract. We wanted him to work for his spot in the side, but the Hawks wanted him a bit more. The Hawks paid him a bit more, and they said, "Hey, you're going to play best 22." So, look, some might say it took the easy way out rather than trying to fight for a spot in our best 22, where we used him as a sub. He
Hmm.
sort of just walked across to another team that looks like they're going to be playing him in best 22 every week. So, did he take the easy way? Maybe, maybe not. That's a discussion for people to have, but his disposal definitely got better as the game went on, and especially in that last quarter, he was really good, and was very prolific. Ethan Phillips, the very recent addition to the Hawks,
Mm-hmm.
came on in the third quarter. Didn't play in the first half. It came on, I think, in the third quarter, and he did well without starring. Obviously, he was playing. He wasn't playing that intercept defender role like we hoped, like he played in the lower league. He definitely was playing very accountable, and quite often when I saw him, he was matched up on Rory Lobb, or a Darcy when they were forward. So, but he did well in those contests without being beaten. So, good on him. We'll see whether or not he gets named in round one.
Yeah. I know that he's been playing like as a train-on player and things like that, but he really needs to come in and play a full game next week because they don't play round 0. Like potentially we might just not get this guy. He could just be like, cool, going to relegate in the VFL. It worried me a little bit today to see him not play a full game because defenders, like, it's not like you have to come in and play full-time mid, right? It's more about your body positioning, being able to jump, that kind of thing. You'd hope he would have been able to come in today and be match ready instead of kind of being relegated to the third quarter. So, yeah, a little bit of warning signs there, but it's only a preseason game and we'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, it might be a warning, but it might also be because he also played in that secondary game.
Yes.
So I think he was initially put on the list to play in the second game that wasn't televised, but because they got another injury to their key defensive stocks, they've had to play him in both games, I think. So that might be a reason why he only played a half. But again, regardless, we got to keep a close eye on this guy. You don't have to try as hard keeping an eye on this guy because he's very eye-catching.
Well, when you're the only good player in the Hawks midfield, you probably it's not hard to see him. It's like everyone knows who LDU is because he's the only one in North. Jai Newcomb did quite well today. Admit the Doggies didn't have the best midfield to kind of combat him. There weren't as many good contested players on the other side, but not a big knock to Jai Newcomb. As I said, with North versus Collingwood, you only play who you can play on field. Like, if the other team doesn't show up, well, sorry. Like, just because you did well doesn't take anything away. So, yeah, not for me in Supercoach, I think. But some people will pick him, and good luck to you.
Yeah, nah. I was always against his pick, and after seeing him today, I'm still against the pick. But, yeah. Hustwaite, a lot cheaper. A lot cheaper as an option.
It's a bit scary because I'm almost feeling like, what can I do with 3 rookies in the midfield instead of running 2? Because Hustwaite just looks good, Joe. I think he's like 195, and I know that we flagged it in the drafts not last year, the year before, because it's 2024 and 2022 draft when we did the stream. Just the Hawks being able to actually come in and pick this guy up and being able to be like, hey, pick 40 odd and how good he was. Because we'd said, hey, this guy's a gem, and we're seeing it now in the preseason. The preseason's always been Harry Hustwaite doing well. And then now it's Harry Hustwaite actually doing well against established AFL players. So watch and see for next week, but he might be someone that gets forced into your team.
Yeah, very clean and congestion. Despite the size, had some very nice fancy footwork to sort of relieve himself and just really able to operate out of a phone box incredibly well. They had a sensational tackle on Oscar Baker, who really backs himself in for pace, and this guy said not having a bar of it, and got a 50-meter penalty to go with it, and then kicked the goal as well. So, I loved Henry's game. He was great. I thought Matt Roberts might be the expensive rookie that we have, but it turns out might be more likely to be Henry. Have to find a little bit more money to get Henry in, perhaps. Speaking about finding a bit more money to get them in, this guy in the forward line, Connor McDonald, you have to find a bit more money to get him into your side if you're running like a Harms, for example, or a Billings, but he might be worth it because this guy genuinely got high up the ground, is playing high half forward, and was involved in a lot of the play outside forward 50, kicking the ball inside. I really thought he had great involvement in the first quarter, and had some nice pickup, had some nice little blind turns, and he would even push all the way up into defensive 50 to help in defense. So that really great work rate, and he's been flagged in the preseason as someone who's been really promising.
Well, we talked about him in the intra-club game last week, right? About him having more of a diverse role on field, playing a little bit more mid, end up being kind of that flanker/transition type role that the Hawks really need. And he's the right age for it as well. So I'm not going to start him this year, Joe, but he could end up being someone, depending on who we get as DPP options throughout the year, he could be someone who maybe post Hawthorn bye, we look to bring into our teams if he can keep up the form.
Fair enough.
It's too expensive.
You wanted to shout out this guy who had a good game.
Yeah, Marbiot Chol. I can definitely see what they're trying to do with him being that key forward. He definitely got singled out a lot in today's game, being that like key forward marking target, and then did some rucking as well. So very, very impressive type player. I don't know if he's going to get selected though, and he did go down. I haven't seen the injury reports yet, but he did go down with, it looked like a wrist injury. Kind of, he fell down in a marking contest, and then other people fell on top of him, and they thought it might have been a knee, but I think it ended up turning out to be a wrist. So we'll see what happens there. But 273K in the realm of guys who, are our mid-price options, kind of got pushed out of Gold Coast's forward line, but there's definitely space for him at the Hawks.
Yep, there's space there for him because Dimmer Hardwick didn't want to have a bar of him over there at the Gold
Well,
Coast Suns.
he left Richmond because of Hardwick, and then he left
Exactly.
Gold Coast because of Hardwick. So when Hardwick comes to the Hawks, mate, that's it.
Off to China you go, mate. All
Yeah.
right, we come then to Cam McKenzie, 271k forward. Again, he didn't play forward. He definitely played a lot more around the ball. Definitely liked his game. He's a very smooth operator, very classy. He actually does remind me a bit of Sam Mitchell with the way he sort of looks and the way his posture is and the way he's like a lot of looking around and delaying the handball or delaying the kick. Really impressive. Again, though, I might not start him as in terms of a super coach selection, but I wanted to shout him out. He's a smooth operator. As is this guy. He's a wizard, right?
Nick the Wit, Nick the Wit, the Wizard Watson. Mate, you can see why this guy was a top 5 pick, Joe. Like, you can see what he's trying to do. I think he's just too far ahead of the Hawks team at the moment that they're not going to set him up to kind of do what he does. So it looks like on field he's trying too hard. But give him a couple of years when he comes into his body and they figure out, hey, Nick Watson's actually a really good player. He's going to shine. Just not really Supercoach relevant being a small forward. And we've spoken a little bit about you don't really pick key forwards in the forward line either in Supercoach. They obviously have to play a different role potentially alongside a key forward. So I know Shaq loves Nick Watson. He's not in my team. Is he a selection for you though?
No, absolutely not. He's very talented, don't get me wrong, but that role for this team, it's just not gonna work out. So I'll just appreciate his magic on the field away from my Supercoach side.
And just don't do it against North Melbourne. That's all I'm saying.
And or Essendon for that matter in round 1. And on that note, that was our deep dive discussion of the game between the Hawks and the Bulldogs, where the Bulldogs got the dub against the Hawks on their home deck. Hope you really enjoyed what we had to say today and the way we went about it.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to gauge these games. Obviously, we talk about who's Supercoach relevant and we'll touch on kind of how the game went. But the first round of the preseason games is basically let's get guys match fit. Let's work out which of our players maybe need a bit more of a rest or kind of get into that. Maybe they can't play a full 100%. We've seen it with other clubs. We saw it today with Bont and English and some other guys maybe not playing. Next week, though, stay tuned for all those monsters because they're going to play, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And let us know in the comments down below if there was any player that we didn't discuss that you do want us to discuss. Any questions that you may have about those guys, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Hit that notification bell, the subscription button, obviously pretty important. Very easy to do. You just take the mouse like this, or if you're on your phone, you just take the finger or the thumb or the pinky. That's a bit weird. Whatever finger in whatever you tool you use, just hit that red button to subscribe and help us grow because we are trying to get to that 2,000 subscriber number.
Guys, remember, we've got a couple of competitions during the season. Join our Supercoach League, and you guys can win 3 amazing prizes. You've got our jersey, tickets to an AFL game, or an AFL voucher. And we're also doing tipping this year where you guys can win a $50 AFL voucher as well. It's all free. You just got to have some hands and press buttons and sign up, and that's it. So get on. It's going to be fun.
Because here at the Centre Bounce, we do the hard work so that you guys don't have to. Bye for now.